All right, guys, let's spend the next couple segments talking about the 4 pillars of money that I know you guys always talk about. So we're going to talk about the 4 pillars of money that are needed for a sturdy retirement.
Well, when I thought about this was in 2013. I went to Washington, D.C. on a vacation. And when I was there, I noticed all these monuments. And almost every monument had pillars that were holding it up. And I took pictures of these because it was in the summer when we went, and it was clear blue skies. And so the way that the marble and those pillars popped off of those blue clouds or the blue sky was just beautiful. And then, I also started to think, man, if you knocked one of these pillars out, this whole thing would fall down, right?
How true.
It's a kind of an amazing thing. Retirement is almost the same way. It got me thinking about how you think about it as, we've got pillars like protection and, or in safety. That's a pillar for retirement, or growth on my money. That's a pillar, or income on my money. That's a pillar, or liquidity of my money. That's another pillar. So it's almost like retirement has these 4 pillars, just like a building in Washington, D.C. has these pillars that hold it up. In retirement, we have these pillars too. And if we knock one of those pillars down, that can really mess with us. It can mess with our finances. It can really affect things in retirement. So that's what we're referring to when we talk about these retirement pillars, these 4 pillars. There's probably a couple more of these, but let's just start with the 4 key pillars.
All right, so let's start with the first one you mentioned, Nick. Then you talk about that first pillar, protection or safety. So protection in your retirement plan, what are we protecting our money from?
Dad, what would you say?
How about stock market losses?
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Interest rate risk affecting those bonds. We've always been told they are so safe, but if interest rates go up,
which they will,
then the bonds may go out of favor real quick. Living longer, longevity. We're living a lot longer. We talked about on the program, I believe last week, about Social Security was going to kick in at 62 for females, 58 or 9 for men, and life expectancy when that began was 66.
So it was only going to pay for a certain period of time.
Right. So now we're living a lot longer. And again, that's probably why Social Security is having some problems. But then you have healthcare costs that are unreasonable. They're going out off the shelf, and they're not going to go back. Like the price of coffee isn't going to go back to 10 cents a cup. Government's lowering benefits in the future for Social Security, forcing us to use more of our money to support ourselves, and higher taxes.
So when you look at all these things, what are we protecting from is all of that.
Yeah.
All the above: taxes, inflation, longevity, healthcare expenses, all this stuff. And if we're not protecting ourselves, there's not going to be anybody else out there that's going to do it for us. So we've got to do it ourselves.
So then how do we protect our savings from paying too much in taxes? I don't control my taxes. The government, IRS, do all that. They set the rates and the brackets. I have no control.
So what I'm going to say is if I had, and I've used this analogy before, but if you were to pay taxes and you were a farmer, would you rather pay taxes on the seed, the 10-cent seed, or the harvest that seed produces? Which would you rather?
I'm going with seed, yes.
Yeah, absolutely, on the seed. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't get away from taxes. There's going to be taxes. I just would rather pay less.
Yeah, minimize them if you can.
That the goal in retirement should be to pay the absolute legal minimum in taxes, because then that means that's more in my pocket that I can use for my family, to give away, to spend on things I want to do, and et cetera. It doesn't mean that I can be paying no taxes ever. I just have to pay less in taxes. That's more in my pocket where it should be. And so what we tell people about is to really organize your money into 3 pots: a taxable pot, a tax-deferred pot, and a tax-free pot. And you got to figure out, where is your money? Now, what most of the time we find is people have IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, SEP IRAs, 457 plans, thrift savings plans. This is where they put all their
share.
80 to 90% of their wealth is right there in that pot. And it's all tax deferred, meaning when they take money out of that pot in the future, they're going to be taxed the largest.
Yeah.
Right. And then it could be that they have to take out so much that their Social Security is taxed. And then the rest of their money, if they have another, anything else saved, it's maybe down in the bank. They got maybe a couple $100,000 sitting in the bank. It's CDs or something like that. And anytime there's earnings in that money, ordinary dividends, taxable interest, all that stuff, anytime they earn money on that, interest or dividends on that, they're paying taxes on that money right then and there. So it's the most tax inefficient way of doing things, and yet that's where most people are. So how do we protect people from this? Is we organize it. We figure out first, where is your money? Is it in a tax efficient bucket or a tax inefficient bucket? And if it's in a tax inefficient bucket, then what we got to do is set things up so that you have more tax efficiency as you go through retirement. You're not investing in the things that are going to get you absolutely hammered the most on your taxes in the future. And our 35-point checklist actually helps you out with this. This is something that we've put together. I challenge you to take this challenge, this On the Money Retirement Checklist Challenge, where you can find out how to pay the legal minimum in taxes. Then there's only 35 questions on this. Now, taxes are one group of questions. There's about 7 questions or so on taxes, but then there's other things that we dive into as well. And what's great about this checklist is if you can check mark off all the boxes, then you'll know in your heart, I'm good to go. But if you're missing some of these things, and let's say you're like, I had a gentleman come in, he got the checklist. He said, I thought I was all set. And out of 35 things, I could only check off 10. He's like, and my heart sank. He's like, 25 things I couldn't check mark. And he's like, it frustrated me. I've been working for 35 years, and you're telling me I couldn't check mark some of these things that seem so basic. If I had only known this 25, 30 years ago, I would be in a much better spot. And so that's what the point is to help identify if you're on track or not on track.